Rudy Lechuga, welcome into Forever Forward, man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. I'm glad to be a guest here. I'm honored.
Yeah, well, it's my pleasure. And before we even start, I want to quickly thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing I want to talk about today, man. Anytime I get a chance to speak to somebody like yourself who has stories to share and has served this country, I'm very intrigued. So I guess we can just kick it off quickly. What drew you to the military in the first place, and why did you ultimately choose the Marines?
Originally I was going to school. I was going to Anderson University. I wanted to play football, and so I played football there for a couple years. But I had my oldest daughter. I had my daughter at a young age. My options was like, all right, I got to go back home, take care of my kid, take care of my business. And so now football's over, and it's not really like I ever thought that I was gonna make it to the NFL. But every guy has that dream that like, hey, I know it's just
Oh, dude, look at me.
sport.
I'm like a little guy. I had that dream too.
Yeah.
So I get it.
But anyways, my brother joined. I've had friends that were joining the military, and I'm like, well, man, this sounds good. I had a recruiter come into my house talking to my brother, and I've never really considered it because I'm like, I can't go. That's like, you don't know what you don't know, and all I think about is like being active duty and like not being able to pick where you're stationed at. So the recruiter kind of talked to me a little bit. He's like, "Oh, well, there's reserves," and I'm like, "Well, what's that?" And he's like, "Well, you go off, you do your school, you pick your job, you do your initial boot camp, you do your MLS school, so you're the school of like what your job is, and then you come back home, and then you just train once a month. You go down to your drill duty station, and then once a year you have to do like they call it annual training, so it's 3 weeks all at once that you go somewhere and you do your training. And then if there's deployments, there's deployments. So I was like, well, that doesn't sound too bad. I'm like, the initial part might kind of suck, just being away from my daughter.
Yeah.
Kind of dragged my feet a little bit on it. Tried to go back to school for a little bit. That wasn't really working out. It was time to like grow up and just get a real job. And I picked the Marine Corps, and I picked infantry of all things. I picked the Marine Corps mainly just because that's what some of my friends were doing, but also I'm thinking if I'm gonna go through the military, I want to pick the hardest one. I want to do the cool thing.
I do want to ask you, you arrive and you said the first part was going to be tough, and I imagine it was. Can I ask you about training? How long was it, and what was it like?
It was 13 weeks of boot camp. You're in San Diego, so if you're on the state line of like Indiana or that part of the country, there's only two places you go to boot camp. You either go to the MCRD in San Diego or you go to Parris Island. And
Got it.
the Marines always have like a funny thing, like the West Coast Marines, they call them Hollywood Marines. Just because like our thing is that at the end of boot camp when you graduate, you get to go to a baseball game with San Diego Padres in your uniform. Like it's a cool thing. We're up in the nosebleeds though, so it's not even like it's we always had that thing where we kind of make fun of each other, all in good jest. But I feel like it was a little different for me because I'm at that point I'm 21. I'm the old guy in the boot camp. Everyone else
Yeah.
is 17, 18.
Makes sense.
Yeah, they're straight out of high school. And so I never thought that like, oh, I'm gonna breeze by this. Like my people told me like what to expect and whatnot. Lay low. You got 60 to 90 people in your platoon. Depending on when you go in the cycle. So I'm just thinking, lay low, do what you're told. When they tell you to do it, like just follow instructions. That's all you have to do. So it was definitely adjustment. The initial, you show up, and even from the time before you even leave, your recruiter, you think you're in the clear, and they're like, all right, now I'm getting ready to go. They're on the phone grilling you like, hey, they're gonna ask you this, they're gonna ask you this.
Oh,
You
really?
better not, yeah, like they're like trying to prep you of like, I better not find out you lied to me about X, Y, and Z. So it's like now you're even thinking like, man, they're still gonna like, I thought I'm like not gonna make it, but I thought I made it into boot camp. But it is from start to finish the most break you down, build you up type of atmosphere for 13 weeks. And I feel like I did okay because I lived on my own effort. Like before I did this, a lot of the other kids were straight from mom's house, straight from dad's house. They were never been on their own. And so they struggled a lot. It was hard mentally for them. But yeah, it was a whirlwind from the time from the day you show up and you stand on the yellow footprints. You stand on yellow footprints. You're just trying to lock your body, be disciplined, all the things, they teach you in the DEP program, which is like you're in this program that kind of prepares you to go to boot camp.
What
But it
were
was
some
tough.
of the actual physical evolutions that they had you guys do? Was it running, pull-ups, sit-ups? Like, what were the things you guys
Yeah.
were engaged in on a daily basis?
Yeah, so every day there was PT, but it wasn't like what you see in the movies of like, all right, we're all gonna get up, we're gonna go on a run, we're gonna chant, like you were chanting and yelling at all times, but all you know is that this is training day 1. This is training day 2. You don't know what's happening. That it's not like there's a schedule of, all right, today we're gonna go out and we're gonna train and we're gonna do some PT, we're gonna march, we're gonna drill.
Do you
It
think
was
they
just
do that on purpose?
Oh,
Is that
yes, the unknown, just do what you're told when you're told to do it, perform to the best of your ability and even further, but you never knew. So there'd be times where you're just getting smoked because someone messed up and they're in your platoon or your team. So we're all getting smoked. They call the quarter deck at the front of the bay, and so they just get on my quarter deck, and now sit ups, sit ups, push ups. There was never a number. There was never a time that was like,
I see.
it was just keep going and put out. And you learn quick that, like, if you're dogging it, they're gonna see that you're just being hot garbage and you're just like, you're not putting out, you're not showing me your best. So the physical part of it, every day you're up 4 or 5 a.m., you go to chow, you come back, you do a bunch of training in between, they scream at you, a lot of it's like trying to figure out how to work with each other. You didn't have time to like, hey, I'm Rudy, nice to meet you. What's your name? Oh yeah, where are you from? Arkansas? Okay, cool. I'm from Indiana. Like you're all just you're looking around, you're all online because they stand you up, they put you in a line, you're in your skivvies, your whitey tighties, and you're just like, you eventually have to learn to work with each other. Doesn't matter your race, religion, color, like you don't get to figure those things out. You just got to figure out, okay, the mission is this, the objective is this, and we have to figure out how to accomplish that together.
I tell you what though, man, that must have been, in hindsight, that
Yeah.
must have been actually nice, right?
Mhm.
Like me nowadays, something that I struggle with is like being present. Like I'm always thinking about the next thing. I almost wish I could just like be in an environment where all I can worry about is right now. Like
Yeah.
body slammed into
Yes.
presence. It sounds like that's kind of what that was like.
Absolutely. No phone, no, you had times where you would write letters and you'd receive mail and that sort of stuff, but there was nothing else on your mind other than, I have to be aware. Some people are just so unaware and it's wild. Like
Yeah.
just the littlest things that like you'd have to be there to understand, but like don't smile. If you're smiling, perception is reality, you smiling at someone and a drill instructor from across the squad base sees you smile. Oh, you're having fun. Good. Get on my quarter deck. This is gonna be great.
Unreal. Let,
Just
let me ask you this.
yeah.
What is a, so you say drill instructor, right? And
Yeah.
I've seen them on television. I've never been face to face with one. What's it like to engage with those people?
So you're a recruit when you go in. I'm not Rudy. I'm recruit Lechuga. You are not a Marine yet. You have not earned that title. So interacting with them is not really a thing. It's aye sir. Oh, that wasn't loud enough. Aye sir. It's just repeating back. There was never really a time until you got towards the end where like they started to kind of level with you in a sense. Like you didn't get to know them. You didn't get to know anything about them. You didn't know if they had a family. You didn't know. It was just do what you're told. This is the training. I'd probably say the most chill part of boot camp was when you got to go to the shooting range, because it was a time where they couldn't stress you out because you're on the
Yeah.
range. They're trying to teach you how to shoot. And the drill instructors actually were not allowed to really be in that training. There were specific instructors for the shooting part. And those guys were just normal Marines in a sense of like, they weren't yelling and screaming at you. They're just trying to teach you. They had roles. You had your senior drill instructor who's like the boss, if you think of it in business terms. You had the president of the drill instructors. And then they call him your kill hat. He's the guy who just smokes people. And his job is just to pretty much ruin you all, test you really. Yeah, there was never really a time where you're like, senior drill instructor, so-and-so, recruit Lechuga, request to come in and talk to you. It was like,
They would laugh in your face, right?
yeah, you'd have to ask to go to the bathroom. You have to ask to do anything. So everything was now a different term. The bathroom was the head. The um, food was chow. Like your top was a blouse. Your bottom was trousers. So you had to learn all this stuff. And if you say something like your hat is a cover, and you speak out and out of turn, and you say like, oh, this recruit forgot his hat. Oh, hat, and then you just start because. Oh, we're back on the block now. It's a hat, like
I see.
oh, it's like then they get you flustered and I forgot that I was supposed because you're not allowed to say I. You can't speak in present, like I can't say I, me, my. It's all recruit. Like I have to speak in third person. And so
Wow.
they
Yeah.
take you down and like you have to hold your bearing. You can't like, oh, let me start over. It's all for a reason, obviously.
Yeah, and I was gonna ask you, like, what do you think that reason is? Is it to enhance your like cognitive ability and your decision making in
Yes.
it under pressure?
Yes, making a decision versus not making a decision at all, and versus freezing up. What are you gonna do when the enemy is, at your door? Are you gonna, "Oh, actually, I wasn't prepared for you. Let's reboot."
Yeah, right. Can we take
Um,
like a 5-minute break?
yeah,
Right. That doesn't
exactly.
exist.
So discipline, they have this ditty called JJ did tie buckle, and it's everything the Marine Corps stands for: justice, judgment, dependability. I probably can't remember them all, but there's everything means something, and that is what a Marine is.
That's amazing, man. And I'm excited to talk in a little bit about how some of those skills continue to like serve you today, because I know that you're still a leader in your own right. But before I even get there, I want to ask you. So once you get out of training and you become a Marine, what did you then end up doing? Like, what was your role in the
Yeah.
Marine Corps?
So I joined, I went in beforehand knowing that I wanted to be in the infantry. And it
Mm.
was because my brother, my friends were infantry, and it was the cool thing to do in the Marine Corps. And this is all jokes, like between my military guys, like they'll get it. Like, if you are not in the infantry, if you're not a grunt, which is what they call you, you are a pogue. You're a personnel other than grunt. It's kind of a joke and a derogatory term of like, you're just a pogue, you wouldn't get it. Like, it means that you are, doing a non-essential job. You're a paper pusher, or you are a whatever. And it was just, it's kind of like an inside joke type of thing, but I didn't want to be that, like, I wanted,
Of
if I'm gonna
course.
go through the Marine Corps and do the boot camp, I might as well do the infantry. That's cool. That's the guys that kick down the doors, they do the firefights, they patrol, and even being as a reservist, like, that's still your job. And if you get called to go do it, that's what you do. So, yeah, I went into it knowing that that was my contract. I signed it ahead of time because what happens is a lot of guys go in open contract and they're just like, "Oh, I don't know, just put me anywhere." And then they get assigned with being like water hygiene specialist or something like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
job that's like, "What? That's not cool, that's not that that's not." So, my advice to anyone that's thinking about joining the military, pick the job you want ahead of time and do your research there.
Yeah, well, it's awesome to hear, dude. And one thing I do hear as well is I've had friends that served and family members that have served. And the funny thing is as I picture what your training experience must have been like, I can imagine it was good, but also like really tough, like super grueling. And I could see how some people would be like, man, that really sucks. But I also hear people describe their role in the military and in the Marines as the best job they ever had. I wonder if you'd agree with that statement. And I wonder why, if you do agree.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree, and it's one of those brotherhoods that's just, it's very hard to explain to even like my service guys that I serve with now, like in the Air Force. Some of them get it, and I think it all depends on how you take your military career. If you're the guy or girl that just goes day to day, just, I'm just here to do a job, and you don't take that time to your and use that time to your advantage to learn and grow and develop, it will just be that. It will just be a job that was just like that sucked. It is what you put into it, but it honestly, it was the best job I had. I met some of my best friends, and I still keep in touch with now, that live in states away. Like, we still connect, daily. I try to visit them when I can. They visit me, but it's one of those things that you go through something really, really hard together and you complete it and you do it again in infantry school. And then you beat those guys when you get assigned to your station, and active duty, if you're active duty, it's your daily life. You're doing the hard things every day. Reserve, we meet up with these guys, once a month, and then we do the trainings together. So, yeah, I would agree that it's definitely one of the best jobs I've ever had, and I would never take it back and do it any other way.
That's beautifully well said, and it speaks to the camaraderie you must develop in something
Absolutely.
like this. I mean, I hate to sound like a high school washout, but like when I think of camaraderie, right? Like I think of my high school sports teams, or I played rugby in college. I think of those guys, and when I think about right, I mean like becoming a Marine, it's another level. I think to some of the hard stuff you have to go through, and so what a privilege it must be, despite how hard it was to like have those bonds. Those are bonds, like those are brothers that you'll always have.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's funny now, even so, now that I'm in the Air Force, I switched over.
Yeah.
I have a couple buddies that were Marines in my unit. So I was assigned to Terre Haute as my unit. Terre Haute, Indiana was my infantry unit when I came back home. But some of those guys that are now in the Air Force with me, when we meet up and see each other on base, it is funny that like the Air Force guys that have been Air Force their whole life, when me and another Marine meet up, we're like hugging, we're just like,
Yeah.
talking Marine stuff, and just like we have our own jargon and lingo. And the Air Force guys will jokingly say, "Oh, you guys are just talking Marine stuff," or like they just know that like you guys are just the way you are because you have that bond from being in the Marines together. And it really is. It's that camaraderie of doing hard things together, but then doing them in a way of like, you do land navigation courses and you're out on your own and you're creating memories and you're figuring stuff out. You're trying to figure out how to accomplish the mission, whatever the job is. Or you're out in the field for 3 weeks straight, and the field is like your training. You're just out there. You're sleeping outside. You're out in the dirt. You're doing your training, and you go to sleep. You wake up, do it again. That time that you spend with your guys over and over and over, you develop this bond and this camaraderie that like it couldn't break. You might have one of the guys. It's like every platoon has like a guy or two that's just the dirt bag of the platoon. You know, he just
Yeah, I can imagine.
yeah, he's late. He's out of shape. He just he doesn't take instruction well. But you still love him. He's like your little brother that you know, or your little sibling that's just like they're annoying, but they're yours. You know,
Yeah, right,
and
right.
when you guys get to go out and have fun and you know be kind of in civilian world and you have each other's back, no questions asked. Like it's not like oh that guy's just you know we don't want to hang out with him. Like he's our brother too. You know. So
Yeah.
no, because of all the things you've done together that were tough.
Yeah, I love that. And honestly, too, it sounds like you all came from different walks of life, like
Oh yeah.
builds and backgrounds and experience. Like there are, I think, a very few environments where you could truly get thrown into kind of like what you were thrown into with a bunch of different people and almost guaranteed come out on the other end as
Oh
a
yeah.
brotherhood.
It you know, when you think back on it, like, there was never really a lot of time to be like, "Hey, where are you from?" Like, you know, like I mentioned earlier, like,
Yeah,
Who
right.
are you? Do you have any kids?" Blah, blah, blah. But the times that you put bits and pieces together during that little bit of time you got to know each other. But Sunday was a big day where it was like, you were almost, in a sense, in boot camp, untouchable on Sundays because it was, you had chapel. If you wanted to go to church, you can go to church. And, man, one of the coolest things ever is just to go to church every Sunday with your brothers and those that are just now finding Jesus for the first time
Oh,
because
that's so cool.
it's better than sitting in the squad bay on a Sunday and chancing that I might get yelled at by a drill instructor. So my friends are going to chapel. I'll go too. And to see some of these guys just come out with faith that they've never had before, that was just by chance of like, I'm just going just to go, you know, was so cool to see that. And even so, that's just another thing of like, you build that and you start doing little small groups together while you had free time and you know, just trying to develop yourself as a Christian in faith. And then on Monday, you're back to, you know, kind of yelling at each other and getting on each other's
Yeah.
nerves, you know,
Right.
like, but remembering what the ultimate goal here to complete this, but also like who we're living for, you know?
That's beautiful, man. Let me ask you this: when you look back on your career in the military, and I know you went from the Marines into the Air Force, but overall, what are you most proud of?
I mean, I guess I said I don't think I've done anything too cool. I never got to deploy, and that was pretty tough. Like that, you that's what you sign up for. But you know, I think I would say overall completing Marine Corps Boot Camp 1 is just to stand there and have your drill instructor hand you. Oh, I wish I had it on my desk. Your Eagle Globe and Anchor.
Yeah.
Like that was when you know, like you earned it. And they say a few things that they're proud of you. And that was a moment that I was like, I'm now transformed into something better than I ever was. Like not just for me, but for my daughter and her future and my future kids' lives.
And
I
for
would have
us, for me,
yeah,
for this whole country.
yes. I mean, and anyone who has come in contact with me since then, because I wouldn't be the same Rudy that I was had I not done that. You know, I would have,
Yeah.
you know, I probably would have figured it out eventually, but I would have never had that structure, that type of training, that type of discipline that has obviously shaping me into who I am today. But I would say one completing boot camp, infantry school was another big accomplishment because there's tasks that like you have to pass these things, or you get washed out and you get recycled and then you can only get recycled so many times before you're like, hey, you're not cut out for the infantry, you know. I got sent to combat marksmanship school pretty much as soon as I got assigned to my unit in Terre Haute. Didn't really know what it was, but they were like, "You're new, you're going." So I'm like, "Cool." But it
Very
pretty
cool.
much what it is I thought I had my hat here, my campaign cover, but it's a school to go to teach other Marines how to shoot better. So you become a expert in shooting, so you can coach other Marines to shoot better when you go on the rifle ranges. It's like a 3-week course. It's not like super grueling, but a lot of knowledge and stuff you got to retain. And that was pretty cool just to be able to do that and then teach other people how to, you know, shoot better. And then just, I think overall, just kind of sticking with it. You know, everyone has their journey, everyone has their path. And, I was very close to just getting out and calling it quits after the Marine Corps. Cause I'm like, I don't know that I want to do this anymore. Like at that time, I had my oldest daughter, I had another daughter. So she's now, at that time, she was not even a year old. So there was a point where I was like, do I just get out and just say that was fun?
Yeah.
But then I see all these guys who got out before me, and it's 2 years later now, and they're missing the Marine Corps, they're missing the Brotherhood, or they're missing the military, and it's like,
Do you find that folks that leave have kind of not trouble reintegrating, but kind of wish they were back in the Marines?
oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I still there's times I wish I was back in it, you know?
What? Yeah. Why do you think that is?
It's a crazy chaos that you miss, you know? They always say you miss the guys, but you don't miss the circus.
Yeah.
You know, you and it's, it's a weird chaos that it's like you thrive in an environment where you're in the suck, and you're embracing the suck, and it's like, but I think for some people, I bet most infantrymen, or maybe even most Marines, might tell you that their regret, or their thing that they wish they could have ended their career on, is a deployment. And so I think that when people get out, the integration part, if you're coming from active duty, I've seen it firsthand with some friends that that's all they know. They went
Yeah.
straight from high school to 4 to 5 years of active duty life, of every day you're told what to do, where to go, where to be, when to wake up, when to go to bed, and that was your life for 4 to 5 years, and now you're just expected to integrate back into civilian life. And for those guys that were active duty, it's very, very hard. They have programs to help them and guide them, and I'm sure they're improving on it, but I've seen guys that just struggle so hard because their identity was the Marine Corps. It was, I'm the infantryman. I'm this at this base, and people know me for that.
Well, also, I'm sure it gives you a deep sense of purpose. Like, okay, this is what I'm called to do, and I'm
Right.
doing it. And then you get out, and physically you're in a different place. You're not wearing the same uniform that you took so much pride in, and you're like, who am I if not
Yeah,
that? That must be a
exactly.
really hard realization for folks. I
Yeah.
can imagine.
They're trying to figure it out. And, for the guys that are on the officer side, they probably have a little bit different path because they already have their degree. They probably already kind of have an idea of what they want to do. But the worst thing you can do is get out without a plan. Is just saying, I'm so over this. But that's what happens sometimes. Based on, depending on where you are, you get a leadership, or you get a base, or certain people that are just bad leaders, just naturally, like any other company. And you get so burnt out, and you're like, I'm just done. I'm done. My contract's up. Get me out of here. I will figure it out later. And then figuring it out later never comes. It gets further and further away. You don't have that plan. And so it's a lot of guys just, yeah, even on the reserve side, they struggle to kind of figure out what they're going to do. And I always tell my guys that were in at the time, when they asked me after I got out and switched, I said, just pick a job that you want to do. Just don't get out yet. Just wait. It's 1 week in a month. It's
Yeah.
not that
Right.
hard. Like, it's hard, but it's like you've already done the hard stuff. You already know what to expect every time you go to drill. You have that one training a year where it's 3 weeks at a time. And some of them switch over, some of them stay in, some of them just get out. But yeah, they end up missing it, and you see it on social media and whatnot. And you try to meet up with your guys and keep in touch, but it's not as easy as it was before, because now you got guys where we all met up in Terre Haute, Indiana. They're spread out all over Indiana and Chicago, and getting together isn't as easy. Just like any life.
Well, one thing you had said that I want to touch on before we talk a little bit about your life now and all the exciting things you have going on is you said you didn't deploy while you were in the Marines, but you said you really wanted to. And
Yeah.
look, I can imagine the reason you joined is because you want to deploy, right? But as somebody who always had aspirations to maybe be in the military, but candidly, I don't know if it was I was not brave enough, or I was a little nervous. Like, I, sitting here right now, would be scared to death to deploy somewhere. What was it about, like, you and once you're with that group that made you, like, fired up to, like, wanna get in the action?
I think for everyone it's probably a little different, but I think for the most, or the majority of people that are in that same boat, it's because, like, you signed up to do a job where you might not come back home.
Yeah.
You were okay with that. You signed that dotted line, you signed that check over, and it was like, put me where you need me. You did the training. Guys in active duty probably even have a harder time doing it because they lived that life for 4 or 5 years and never got one. But our guys got back from Iraq right when I joined the unit, so I just missed that deployment. But it was a part of just knowing that, like, not only did we join the Marine Corps, we joined the infantry, and that is our job. Everyone's job in the Marine Corps revolves around the infantry. The infantry is what holds that military together. Every job is important and has its role. Don't get me wrong, but when we make fun of each other with the whole pogue thing, it's a light-hearted, because we know that when we're downfield and we're downrange and we need supplies, who's dropping that off? It's not the infantry guys. It's the guys who are in charge of logistics and those types of things. So everything's important. Don't get me wrong, but to join the Marine Corps and then join the infantry and do the things that you want to do. You want to go and protect your country and get rid of, the nastiness in the world, and be a part of the fight. You wanted to be in the fight, and you didn't get to do that because it was almost so hyped up that you always heard, oh, there's a deployment coming. There's a deployment coming. So you're always like, oh my gosh, we're going to get one. We're going to get one. And then it was just always a letdown. It was just, and so
It's just so funny to hear you say that, though. Like, as I sit here right now, I'm imagining, like, what if I was drafted into the military? Like, I'm sure the heroic part of me would love to be like, "Oh, I'm fired up, let's go."
yeah.
But, like, in reality, I know that there'd be a little part of that, but a lot of part that would be like, "Oh my god, I'm terrified." But to
Yeah.
hear that, like, and you are completely genuine in the way you explain this. Like, you guys were fired up, like, oh my gosh, we might get to go.
Yeah.
And to go to some of the most dangerous places in the world, it's really a heroic thing. And I don't think it should go unsaid, man. I mean, you guys are special people.
Thank you, thank you. And I feel like a lot of that's probably comes from the training too. I don't know that I could say Rudy before the military.
Yeah,
Someone
yeah.
would have asked me like, just what if there was a draft and they said you got to go to Afghanistan right now? I don't know that I'd be the same fired up guy that's like, yeah, let's do it. I might be like, ooh, just because I haven't been trained to do it. But now that you've been trained and the discipline's been instilled, all the hard work has been. The foundation's been laid. You are ready to do it. I think that has a lot to do with like your brain is prepared for it. Your body's prepared for it.
True.
So there's never a question of like, am I going or not going? And 99% of the people, there's never a thought that's like, I don't know if I want to go on this deployment. It's like, we know what we signed up for. This is what
Yeah.
we if I didn't want a chance to deploy, I would have picked doing like something admin work or something that's less chance of being deployed. Like, so I
And I'm
think
sure you even like imagine, like, you probably imagine yourself there. Like, okay, this is what it would be like. These are the things I would do. Like, you probably wanted to experience it for real.
quick funny story with like how it ended there was that in the Marine Corps, my buddies that already switched over to the Air Force, they pretty much did like they did the vouching for me. They had been there for a year or two, and they were like, okay, it's real, it's actually cool here. And so like, all right, I'm gonna do it. And
Yeah.
so I did 6 years of my contract. In my contract stuff, I can do whatever I want. I can drop to the IRR, which is it's just pretty much you're out. And now they still kind of own you for 2 years. If anything were to happen in the world, they have 2 years in the IRR where they can call you back if they needed you. So I can drop to the IRR. I can switch branches. Those were kind of my options, or resign and stay in. And so at that point, I was trying to do a transfer package so that like I didn't have to drop out and then re-enter the Air Force. I was just trying to transfer right over. And so this whole thing with like our annual training was going back and forth with like, oh, we're going to go to Africa for our annual training for 3 weeks. I'm like, oh, sweet. I'll stick around for that. That's cool. Trip. We went to Norway when I first got there. That was a little less than a month of a trip. But that's like the only cool thing we really have gotten to do outside of the country. And so like, I'll stick around for Africa. And then they tell you Africa's canceled. And I'm like, gosh dang, okay, now I'm getting out. And so I'm getting all my signatures. It's my last drill. I already had everything set up with my recruiter at the time. Everything, they already knew what job I wanted. I knew what, like, all the incentives. I knew what I was doing. Call my recruiter, say, hey, I'm signing out this drill and get all my signatures, like have my package ready so I can just sign it on Monday. I go into the office to get all the signatures from everybody, turn all my gear in, take my pictures with my buddies. And then the first sergeant, he's like, hey, Lechuga, why are you getting out? He's the last signature I need. And I'm like, we're not going anywhere. I'm just, I liked the time I had here, but I'm just in a different season of my life where it's like, if I'm going to deploy, I want to do it now, like I want
Yeah,
that
fair.
deployment. And it's like, so we're just not going anywhere. We just keep hearing that this is coming, this is coming. So, and he was like, well, there's a base in Michigan that's going to Afghanistan and they need 40 guys. He's like, I'll put you on that list if you stay. And I'm like, how many times do we hear stuff like this? Just to take your word on this. I'm like, I can't. I already have like this set up and that set up. He was like, we can just say that, it's mandatory that you are already on the list. And I'm thinking about it. I'm like, I really want to say yes and just trust this guy. But how do I know that that's really going to happen? So I'm like, I'm sorry, First Sergeant. Like, I just can't. Like, I want to, and I want to believe you that this would happen, but I don't trust it. So he was like, all right, fair enough. He signs. Next thing you know, those guys go to Afghanistan. Like,
You're kidding.
and I was just like, dang it. It was peacetime, so it wasn't really like there was anything really cool happening or anything going on, but it still would have been the fact that I got to say, I went to a combat zone. I deployed in a combat zone as an infantryman. So yeah, that's how that chapter ended.
Yeah, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But look, it sounds like given the information you had really no other decision to make. Well, look, you've done a lot since you've left, and I know you're a business owner now, and you've got daughters as well. And as you look back at the military, like, what life lessons did the Marines, and of course the Air Force, but more broadly the military, just teach you about how to deal with real life, especially like, how to navigate the many things you have going on right now?
The military, the Marine Corps is like one of their things that they always say is adapt, improvise, adapt, and overcome. That applies to anything in life. You control what you can control is a big thing too. It's like, a lot of the officers say it, a lot of your leaders say it throughout your time. When things are going wrong, what can you control? Why are you worrying about tomorrow? Which, goes a lot with like my faith too. It's like Jesus tells us the same thing. Like, why are you worried about tomorrow? Be in the present. Like, I will provide for you. But the Marine Corps kind of like teaches you in a way that like you have to control what you have going on. What can you control? Okay, I can control that. I can control that. I have no control over those things. So I'm not going to worry about those, but I'm going to do really good at these things.
Right.
These are the things that I can make an impact on and make a difference on. So in a sense of being a leader, you now have to make your guys trust you that like, look, this is the mission, this is what we got to do. And this is what we can control. So let's do really good at these things. And so I feel like a lot of what seems simple at the time and just seems like words at the time when you're in the suck and it just seems like, like it's just things that you say, but it really does transfer over to just life and business. And I feel like I've always tried to be the guy that's like, we're going to figure it out. It's okay. This will get figured out. And I'm not going to sit here and sulk and just be pouty and like feelings are real. Don't get me wrong, but there's a period in life where you gotta turn it on and you gotta figure it out. And you tell me I can't do something. Well, that's where you're wrong. Like I'm gonna figure it out. Like I feel like a lot of those lessons that they teach you, again, all hindsight, you look at where you're at in life, whether it's business or just your regular job or kids, like my second daughter, she went through heart surgery at 3 months. And at that time and period of like her just being in the hospital, there was a lot of unknown. We're gonna trust our God, one, and two, we're gonna trust that just like these doctors, but we cannot control what happens tomorrow. We can control what happens here.
That is the ultimate exercise, though, in
Yeah.
relinquishing control to only what you can, because like I'm sure you would have done anything to say, to make sure it all went right, but you are
Right.
forced, you are truly forced to take your hands off and say, I'm only going to worry about what I can worry about right now.
Right.
And that's easier said than done. I get that advice a lot.
Yeah.
I'm a big worry about everything kind of guy, like everything in my life, so
Big.
um
It's natural. I mean, I still do it now. I'm not perfect, but it's like, at some point you get to a point where like, you know what? I just gotta take a step back. And because I'm just creating scenarios that are not there.
do you find that you are more able to deal with like just the general volatility and chaos of life?
Oh yeah, you thrive in just in chaos. I don't want to say thrive in the sense of like, oh, I love it, let's do it, but
Yeah.
I feel like Rudy pre-military would probably have had 10x more breakdowns, 100x more breakdowns, like, but you just get to the point where it's the chaos happens and you just got to figure it out. But I think there's just too many times in the military or we're out in the field and things don't go right. It's pouring rain. You can't get your tent up and now you're just soaked. Your systems are all soaked.
Yeah.
Just like those times of just embracing the suck and then just kind of going with the flow and just accepting that this is just where we are right now. And all we can control is how we move forward.
I love that you said that because honestly, I feel like as I get older and turn into like an adult or whatever, like life is just getting crazier and crazier every day. And like I keep getting curveballs thrown at me left and right. And in some ways I feel like I'm equipped to deal with it. In some ways I don't. And that's where I sometimes lean on my faith or lean on
Absolutely.
past experiences. But like there's something to be said for forcing yourself to go through the suck so that like let's say you're really busy at your corporate job. You're like, well, this is nothing compared to that time in boot camp when this, that, and the other thing happened. Like you have real things to draw on. It's not pretend. It's like, oh, I have receipts.
All the minor inconveniences really prepare you for everything else in life that you would never think it would, and I try to like instill those things in my daughters. I'm a girl dad. I got 3 girls and
Oh, congratulations, by the way, man.
yeah, absolutely. I love it. And, I love being a girl dad. I think it was for the best that all my kids are girls, but that it was a girl. As a young father, having a boy it would have been tough because I'm just very competitive. I'm very like, I would have been way too hard on a boy. So, God knew what he was doing. But, like I try to instill those things into my kids and especially my oldest now that she's a teenager. Cause it's like, yeah, this sucks. This is life. This is where we are. These are minor inconveniences that all these little things are not perfect, but you may not see it now, but at some point in life, you will think that you went through those things because it's not the first time you're experiencing failure. It's not the first time you're experiencing the minor inconvenience of this or that later on in life when you go to apply for that job or try to get into that school.
Exactly.
Fail early and fail often. It's okay to fail. And I try to like teach my girls that because I didn't really have that kind of like structure as a child. So it was like, those types of things, like as much as I want to protect them and help them and guide them and just make sure like everything's perfect for them. There's so many times where I have to sit back and just let it happen. Just let them fail a little bit, no matter what it is.
And in the moment, it's so easy to get caught up in it. Like, oh my gosh, this, that, and the other is happening, and everything's falling down around me. I mean, look, I feel like that almost every day. But at the same time, I think I'm trying to do a much better job of I don't want to say keeping the faith, but just staying grounded, right? Drawing on the fact that, like, look, if I'm not failing, that means I'm not growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you
Look,
fail and you stop and you're like, "Oh, that's it. I don't like the feeling of that." That's as far as your body and your mind and that you know to go. You never
r-
want to really it's just like training physically, when you train for fitness, you get to a certain point where something's hard and you quit. That's all your body knows. It's never going to get any better because you haven't pushed past that level.
exactly right. Well, look, let me close on this and let me ask you, for any young men or women, in their teens and 20s that are considering maybe a career in the military, specifically with the Marines, what advice would you give to them?
I've had some people ask me, and I've had some parents come up and ask me to speak to their kids about it. And I would say, do the thing that's hard. Do
Yeah.
the thing that you're like a little scared to do. Pick a job that you know you're gonna like. Do not let the recruiters like talk you into something that's like they just need bodies over here, so go do this. Have somewhat of a plan. Join the DEP program. Don't be afraid to do it, and just the longer you put it off, it's gonna become one of those things that it was like, it's too late now.
Yeah, well, I feel like those two things you said, do hard things and don't put things off. That goes for the Marine Corps and that goes for everything in life, man. And I'm glad that we
Yeah,
can kind of close on something like that because, look, I spent most of my life putting off hard things. I spent most of my life waiting until next week, and next week turned to next month, and next month turned to my whole life. And
absolutely.
now I think about things a whole lot differently. But if I had never taken that leap of faith, then I would never be the person I am today. And I'm sure there's a lot more failure for me to experience.
Yeah,
Look, stories like yours really do keep me going. So I appreciate you joining. And
awesome.
where can folks find you on the internet if they're curious?
I'm on Instagram, I'm on Facebook. I post a lot mainly about like fitness and my family. So feel free to give me a follow. I post some funny stuff here and there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm pretty upbeat, like just funny dad, I guess. But then, you find me in the gym at F45. If you're in Fort Wayne, come visit me at the gym. I'd love to have you for a class. But yeah, I mean, I'm in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and I love to just meet and connect with anybody. So I was happy that you reached out just because
Yeah.
I think I maybe went on one or two podcasts, more mainly for work stuff, you know. But it's great to connect with people and just kind of learn about other people and their lives. And just share, someone else's testimony. You never know. There could be someone that's like, I've been waiting to, I've been wanting to join this or do this or, kind of any other stories you share. That the people you have on your podcast. I feel like that's probably a big reason why you do what you do because you like to share other people's story and hey, it could inspire somebody.
Yeah, man. Well, that's the hope. And I can't thank you enough for jumping on. This has been incredible. Look, you've almost got me wanting to now go join the Marines. So you've done something right. But thanks again, man.
Absolutely.